guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Pauper Ponderings Top 10. And your top 10 this week is the top 10 best tribes in Pauper. So this is a completely wholesome list. I'm not trying to nonsense troll you this week. This is all wholesome. I guarantee it. These are, in my opinion, the top 10 best tribes in Pauper. The reason I wanted to do this list is because there's a lot of different, I guess, the best tribes in Pauper. While the good ones come to the top that you can probably figure out, there are a lot of tribes that you just really don't see in other formats or other, I guess, legalities or rarities, if you will. There's a lot of really niche creature types and creature tribes that come to the forefront in Pauper, and that's going to be really interesting to take a look at. So, if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get right into the list. Starting with number 10. All right, coming in at number 10, and this is where I guess the craziness starts, is Elemental, which is really just not a tribe you would think of if we were talking about modern best tribes or standard best tribes or legacy best tribes. But at the end of the day, there are a certain subset of creatures that see a lot of play in modern, and two of those creatures happen to be Kiln Fiend and Muldrifter, and both happen to be elementals. So Muldrifter we've seen in just a number of decks. Any sort of Tron variant plays this card. A lot of my Pauper Ponderings decks actually play this card, just due to the fact that it's just one of the best blue cards in this format. And that's pretty crazy to think about when you have Counterspell, and you have Ponder, and you have Preordain, and you have Brainstorm, you have Gush, and you have Daze, and you have Spellstutter Sprite, and you have Delver of Secrets. When Muldrifter, a 5-mana 2/2 flyer, can make its way into that select company, if you will, that's just crazy. On the other hand, we have Kiln Fiend. This is a card that sees play in the blue-red Izzet Blitz deck alongside Nivix Cyclops. The ability is just very, very powerful. For this rate, you get a 2-mana 1/2, and then whenever you cast an instant sorcery, it gets +3/+0. And as Magic has gone on, we've seen cards that get printed that are just so good with that ability, in terms of cards like Mutagenic Growth that's free. You know, you have cards like Apostle's Blessing, which cost one that really shouldn't be a blue or red card. These are just cards that really fuel this blue-red kind of combo aggro deck, and that's why you see elementals on this list, is because they control, or they have two very, very important cards for a number of different decks. Kiln Fiend definitely a little more centralized, but Muldrifter is just kind of a toolbox card in that almost any blue deck is going to play this card, short of actually just mono blue Delver. So, let's go to number 9. Alright, coming in at number 9, we keep the ridiculousness flowing. Number 9 is Core. And again, this tribe barely registers on any other format, but here we see two of the staple white creatures in the format. Core Skyfisher is the backbone of, Boros Cyborg, Kuldotha Jeskai when it was a deck. Reality Acid. This card is very, very powerful in just these grindy mid-range decks that we see, just due to the fact that all of these decks are able to play cards like Prophetic Prism and Alchemist's Vial that are able to recur draw off of those artifacts, and Core Skyfisher being a 2-mana 2/3 flyer, that's actually much, much, much above the curve in Pauper in terms of actual beatdown threat. On the other hand, you have Lone Missionary, and in a format where, the burn deck is pretty close to the legacy deck in power level, Lone Missionary is a great rate. 2 mana for a 2/1, comes into play, gains 4 life. Now, as you can probably make out, these two cards work very well together, in that, bouncing Lone Missionary with Core Skyfisher and then replaying Lone Missionary, that's enough in a lot of cases to actually beat the burn deck by itself if they don't have any sort of interaction in terms of not being able to gain life, or a piece of burn that is going to do damage over multiple turns. So something like Thermo Alchemist or Thornborough Archers or Curse of the Pierced Heart. So this combination of cards finds its way high up on the list because it is just so potent in these mid-range white decks. And the fact that their core is just sweet, right? From Zendikar, they were back from Battle for Zendikar, only really a couple of sets with core in it, but the fact that they've been able to find themselves on this list is pretty sweet. Let's go to number 8. Coming in at number 8 is Rat. And who would have thought rat? This list continues to surprise me in terms of these niche creature types that really define this powerful format. And here we have rat. So the two most prominent rats in Pauper are Chittering Rats and Crypt Rats. Chittering Rats, 1 black for a 2/2. When he comes into play, target opponent puts a card on top of his or her library from their hand. And then Crypt Rats has the ability to basically be Wrath of God. It is pretty close to the Wrath of God of Pauper. Both of these cards serve huge roles in black decks in the format. Crypt Rats anywhere from, control decks to aggro decks that want a fireball out of black. Chittering Rats with the ability to be flickered with Ghostly Flicker, or just being played in the mono black deck. Just very, very powerful, very, very format defining. On to number 7. Coming in at number 7, probably, which is ridiculous to say, the most normal creature type is Eldrazi. And the two Eldrazi that really come to mind when you think of this tribe in Pauper are Ulamog's Crusher and Nest Invader. Nest Invader is one of the creatures prominently played in Stompy, which is one of the best decks in the format. Mono green aggro deck that takes advantage of really efficient green pump spells. And it being 2 Bonnies for 2 mana, quite powerful in that deck that really operates on a low curve. On the other hand, on the very other end of the spectrum, we have Ulamog's Crusher, which is essentially the big creature of the format next to something like Gurmag Angler. We don't really think of Gurmag Angler as a big creature just because it usually only costs 1 or 2 mana. Ulamog's Crusher was the premier threat in Tron for a long time. It has since taken a backseat to just the powerful spells that can be flashed back with Mnemonic Wall, but Ulamog's Crusher still finds its way into some decks every now and then. The card is quite big, it is quite powerful, and if decks don't have a removal spell for it, it is going to do a really good job of ending the game very quickly. Nest Invader, again, more of a role player, but these Titans deserve to be on this list, and I'm happy with them at number 7. Let's go on to number 6. Coming in at number 6, probably the first traditional tribe on this list, and this is actually a tribe that a couple of years ago they would have been much higher on the list, and that is Goblins. So here we have an array of Goblins. Most of them are played in the Goblins deck. The other one, Mog War Marshal, is just a good card. It sees play in a decent amount of decks, and I did like one to highlight it as well. Goblin Bushwhacker also sees play in just some other kind of token niche strategies. I've played it in Goblin Storm before, but that's not really a Goblin deck. It's more of a kind of a combo deck in a sense. The other two, Goblin Sledder and Sparksmith, real backbones of the Goblins deck in Pauper. As you see, Goblin Sledder, very, very powerful in that it allows you to kind of move damage around, which is really, really powerful in a format that is comprised almost entirely of, Lightning Bolts and Doom Blades and Chainer's Edicts. The fact that you're able to move the damage around in combat is quite powerful. As you can see, Goblin Sledder, sacrifice a goblin, target goblin gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it does a really good job of breaking through standstills. It acts a lot like actually Arcbound Ravager in Affinity, but just kind of a lot less powerful. Sparksmith is another card. It's going to do a really good job of gumming up the ground and killing all of their creatures. And then again, we talked about Mog War Marshal being kind of this good token creature that we see come up in some decks, and a lot of Pauper Ponderings decks we actually see Mog War Marshal, as it does a good job of being sacrificed to Carrion Feeder, which is a Pauper Ponderings favorite. And yeah, it's sad that actually Goblins is this far out on the list, but that just means there's 5 better tribes that are after it. If you have any ideas of what those 5 tribes may be, pause the video, take a quick second, try to figure out what 5 through 1 are. But without further ado, let's move on to number 5. Well, we're almost halfway, or we are halfway home, guys. Coming in at number 5 are the Hellspawn Fairies. So fairies make up a large amount of the creatures in the Mono Blue Delver deck, which is one of the tier 1 decks in the format. The combination of Fairy Miscreant and Spellstutter Sprite is very, very, very annoying to deal with, to say the least. A lot of the times they're going to be able to play the Fairy Miscreant to bounce it back with the Ninja because it's the 1/1 flyer, very difficult to block, and then later on cast it again. It also adds to the Fairy count for Spellstutter Sprite, so a lot of the time Spellstutter Sprite in the format is just 2 mana 1/1 flyer with counterspells tacked onto it. These cards do a really good job of pushing that Delver deck into the next echelon of decks in the format. They are quite good. You don't see a lot of other fairies that are played. Sometimes you see Pestermite, but on the whole, these are the 2 fairies that you are going to encounter in Pauper, and watch out, because they're pretty difficult to play against, let alone beat. On to number 4. Alright, in at number 4 is probably my favorite addition on this list, and that is Beast. Now, when you think of beasts, you're thinking, big bears, big, some sort of jungle animals, things that hang out with Garrett Wildspeaker, I guess you could say. But in Pauper, the beast creature type is actually reserved for the Boggles deck. Slippery Boggle happens to be a beast for some reason. I guess. And Aranarlid, which is, their kind of answer to Core Spirit Dancer, just a little bit more fragile, but can get actually bigger and is harder to block, is Aranarlid. So both of these happen to be beasts. There aren't a lot of other beasts in the format that see a lot of play, but in my opinion, they were really so important to the Boggles deck itself that I had to put them on the list. I don't want to talk too much about them because everyone knows I don't like Boggles very much, but I did show them their respect and put them at number 4 on this list. Let's go to number 3. Alright guys, we're into the heavy hitters now. In at number 3 is Wizard. So Wizards make up a huge population of the best decks in the format. We see Augur of Bolas, which was actually just downshifted from Uncommon, has made it a extremely big impact on the format. Showing up in blue-black control. Any of those blue-red Delver lists are playing Augur Bolas. Basically, any blue deck that wants to go into the mid to late game is going to be packing some amount of Augur of Bolas's. Right behind it, we have Seagate Oracle, which is very similar to Augur of Bolas in that, you're getting that 1/3 body, you're getting some amount of card advantage out of it. It's just really Augur of Bolas being 2 mana versus 3 mana. That is a pretty big difference, but, you got the downside of Seagate Oracle can find you creatures or lands. And then finally, Delver of Secrets in as a wizard. Everyone's favorite 1 mana 3/2 flyer. Very, very powerful. I'm not going to discount, even though it isn't a wizard on the backside. Nobody's caring about Insectile Aberration. It's all Delver of Secrets. That's what's on the that's what's on your deck list sheet, anyways. But yeah, Wizards, very, very powerful. Everyone knows this. One of the most powerful tribes, just in general. We kind of went through the list. There was a bunch of like rats and core and elementals. Those really aren't very powerful in other formats. Well, I got news for you. Wizards is one of the most powerful tribes in all of the formats. We see it in Modern. There's a lot of human wizards, fairy wizards, merfolk wizards. They're all just very, very good, and they make up a lot of some of the most powerful formats. On to number 2. In at number 2, we have humans. Now, I know what you're going to say. There's a lot of these tribes that really overlap. We saw a lot of human wizards. We saw the Spellstutter Sprite as a fairy wizard. But at the end of the day, the humans that I want to highlight here are humans that, aren't wizards and they aren't some other random creature type. So these are some of the most prominent humans in the Pauper format, and they really do make a huge impact. We have Palace Sentinels and Thorn of the Black Rose. These are 2 cards that have really made a huge impact in the short time that they've been in the format, really revitalizing these black and white mid-range decks. They now have a way to fight against these blue-based control decks. A card like Thorn of the Black Rose really makes it so the blue-black control decks actually have to do things. Before they could just play Curse of the Bloody Tome, have it sit and play, and then you're never going to win. With Thorn of the Black Rose in play, you draw, so it's essentially a Phyrexian Arena. A Phyrexian Arena that they really cannot destroy. They can't bounce it with Capsize. It is very, very powerful. Thermal Alchemist. This gives the mono-red burn decks just more angles of attack. I should have put Thornbow Archers on here as well, but it just wouldn't fit aesthetically as nicely. But we'll say that Thornbow Archers and Thermal Alchemist kind of fit into the same thing, is that they're both going to tack extra damage on all of the burn spells that you're playing. So while the red burn deck in Pauper doesn't get access to things like Sulfuric Vortex, and it doesn't get access to things like Skullcrack or anything like that, with these cards in your deck, they just kind of add up. They're just incremental points of damage. They don't have Goblin Guide. They don't have Monastery So Spear. So they need to use these types of cards to just sit there and accrue points of damage. And that's what those do. And finally, Burning Tree Emissary. Again, another card downshifted from uncommon to common thanks to Modern Masters 3 has really pushed a lot of these aggressive green decks into spots where before they were kind of, well, I'm tasked with playing one spell a turn. Well, with Burning Tree Emissary, you're not. You get to explode into these ridiculous turns of putting, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 permanents onto the battlefield in a single turn. So these humans, like we've seen in other formats, they define the format. And I think that's just Wizards being like, you know what? People like to see themselves, and people like to kind of be the protagonists in their own story. And that's what we get with humans always being a good tribe in almost every format they're available in. So, what's number 1? I'm pretty sure you can figure it out. If you haven't already, let's go find out though. Well, let's make it official, let's say. Well, number 1, it had to be, it was gonna be, you guessed it, I knew it, Elves. In the number 1 spot in the best tribe in Pauper, it is without a doubt Elves. Not only do they have very good role players in a number of decks, with Quirion Ranger being a staple of the Stompy archetype, letting it play so few lands because Quirion Ranger gives you those extra land drops. Nettle Sentinel as well being very good in that deck while also being good in the Elf deck. Gladecover Scout allowing the deck Boggles to be a thing. And then again, you have an actual Elves deck. So all of those things encompassed together make this the best tribe in Pauper. Look at these cards. Well-Wisher is a card that a lot of decks just straight up lose to if they can't kill it after 1 or 2 turns. Priest of Titania is on a power level that is so unprecedented for Pauper, it rivals some of the best spells. And when you look at Pauper, the best cards are spells. So the fact that you can say that about Priest of Titania is huge. Timberwatch Elf is a way for these Elves deck to almost combo you. You don't really get the, you can't play Grape Shot. You can't play Craterhoof Behemoth. Well, you can play Timberwatch Elf. And any elf gets through, you're eating 15. You're eating 16. You're eating 17. Sometimes you're eating like 28. It doesn't matter. Timberwatch Elf gives you that combo that these elf decks thrive on. They're able to make a bunch of guys, but normally they're 1/1s, maybe 2/2s. Timberwatch Elf pushes them beyond. It allows it to go over the top of everything. We're not going to discount Nettle Sentinel. This card is a staple in the Mono Green Stompy deck, and it's a staple in this deck. With cards like Timberwatch Elf, or no, the tap 2 elves make a mana, not quite as good as Heritage Druid, obviously. There's just so many applications for Nettle Sentinel in the format. Gladecover Scout allowing those 2 beasts to be a deck in Boggles. Then you have Quirion Ranger, again, just a very, very powerful card. The list goes on and on. You can name all of them. Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, Fyndhorn Elves. They continue to pile on top of one another. Elvish Vanguard. There's so many. You could just name the entire Elves deck. And that's what really pushes these guys to number 1. So, did you agree? Well, let's go take a look at our list, and then you guys can call me an idiot down in the comments. Because again, at all points, I want to be called an idiot in the comments. Very important. I only saw, I think, 2 on my video on Thursday, so figure it out, guys. Come on. All right, let's go take a look at the full list, and then we can determine how much of an idiot I am. Alright guys, so here is the final list one more time. In number 10 we had Elementals, number 9 we had Core, 8 was Rats, 7 was Eldrazi, 6 was Goblin, 5 was Fairy, 4 was Beast, 3 was Wizard, 2 was Human, and number 1 was Elves. So tell me what you thought of my list in the comments. Tell me how wrong I was. Tell me how right I was. But most of all, if I was an idiot in any of these, make sure you tell me. Thanks for watching, guys. And again, if you like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. As well, check us out online, www.themanofAce.com. A lot of good stuff going on over there. We got some new Commander first pick should be coming out pretty soon. So in addition to my videos as well as Cubism, you gotta love those guys. You know what I'm talking about. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with another gameplay video, and then another top 10 video as per usual. Again, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you on Thursday.